Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Marty Ross, and this is another Lyme Q&A with Marty Ross MD. Welcome here everyone. It's good to see many familiar faces again, and I see some new ones as well too. It looks like my dog bouncing around back there. You may see some movements in the background. My two Basenjis are with me tonight, and they can move around pretty quickly, so if you see a black flash go by, that's going to probably be them. The way these webinars work, you get to write questions to me, and every one of these webinars is different because it's actually formulated by the questions that you write. I'll try to answer as many as I can tonight, and sometimes you'll hear me say, I don't know, because sometimes you all bring up ideas that I haven't considered before, some things that I'm just not aware of, but I'll try to handle as many as we can. My goal in doing these webinars is to help you improve your health and to help you get over this illness that we call Lyme disease. And so I'll try to do that to the best of my abilities tonight. Tomorrow morning, you will get a recording link. I will send it to you through the email. So this is being recorded. So if you happen not to get all the information, don't worry, you'll get it in the recording tomorrow. From time to time, you're going to see that I do a screen share. So that I'll show you information at our Treat Lyme and Associated Diseases site. And in that site, the major part of the site is actually the Treat Lyme book. Many of you are familiar with that. If you don't have access yet, you probably want to get access to it because we got a lot of useful information there for you. It is available by subscription. I will refer to it tonight a number of times. And during the webinar, we'll go there a number of times. The other thing that I'll present from that site too is if any of you do want to have visits with me, we can do that online. And I'll show you how you can set that up through that website. However, if we're doing online visits and you haven't been in for at least one in-person visit, I can't write prescriptions for you, nor can I write orders for you. But sometimes I can give you some great advice that you can discuss with your doctor or that you can implement on your own. Okay? So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to go. So what we can do is I'm able to post the questions on the screen for you to read them. And by the way, Dr. Brooke is not going to be participating tonight and probably not again on these webinars, okay? So it's just going to be me. Let's go ahead and let's get started with the first question. Hello, everyone. Let's see. Hi, Drs. Ross and Brooke. Let's see. I've been taking, this is from Deborah. Hi, Deborah. I have been taking NT factor for about a year. Is there any continued benefit to continuing it? I still have episodes of slight to moderate fatigue. I'm being treated for Lyme, Borrelia, or Bartonella for a year, and I'm getting better, thanks. Okay. So everyone, NT factor is a product that can help with energy. And specifically, what it helps repair is injury to the energy factories that are found in every one of our cells. Those energy factories are called mitochondria. By some estimates, there's about 300 to 400 mitochondria in a cell. So we've got a lot of these power factories, if you will. And what happens inside mitochondria is fat and sugar are taken into the inside of the mitochondria, and they're burned through a bunch of chemical reactions into cell fuel. Okay, cell fuel is something called ATP. Now, one of the things that can happen when a person has chronic Lyme is that there is an overproduction of a group of what are known as oxidizing agents. And oxidizing agents can damage membranes. They can damage your cell membranes, but they also can damage the membranes that create the covering of the mitochondria. And those membranes are made up of layers of fat, okay, a type of fat called phospholipid fats. NT factor is basically those phospholipid fats, and in addition, it has in it micronutrients that are used by the mitochondria as well too. There are studies done looking at what can happen if you try to repair the mitochondria with NT factor. And one of the studies shows that by 2 months of using it, there are average energy improvements of about 40%. So that's pretty impressive. I usually am going to recommend that people start NT factor if we're about 6 months into treatment and we're not making any headway on their energy, or we haven't made much of a headway into energy. Then I might start looking at repairing mitochondria. We don't always have to do it, but about 6 months in, I'm going to start wondering, has there been some injury to the mitochondria? Should we start fixing that, okay? So the way I like to do it for 2 months at 2 pills 3 times a day. And then after 2 months, I like to use it for an additional 4 months at 1 pill 3 times a day, okay? So Deborah, you've actually used it longer than you probably need to. At a point, you rebuild the covering of the mitochondria well enough that it is now fixed well enough that it can create its own changes and its own repairs, okay? So at a point, it's able to start repairing itself, and you don't need to keep giving it the NT factor. So at this point, I'd probably go ahead and stop. Now, the other time I'll use NT factor, everyone, is it also repairs nerve injury by repairing the cell coverings of the nerves, okay? And it also helps give them more energy to repair themselves too. So I also use it as part of a nerve repair regimen along with a substance called glutathione. Glutathione is a master reparative antioxidant made in every one of our cells, and it can help repair injuries. So for nerves, I like using NT factor to repair the membrane from the outside. I like to use the glutathione to repair the nerves from the inside. And the product I like to use for that is something called Tri-Fortify Orange. It's a liposomal variety of glutathione, something that can be well absorbed easily. Okay, so I know you may have questions about these things, so let me just do a quick screen share. There's a few things I want to show you on the screen share here. So let me go ahead and get that set up here. Okay, so this is our Treat Lyme book. You're going to find it at www.treatlyme.net. And on here, you can learn about most things you want to learn about Lyme disease. I haven't added anything here in a bit. I've had some preoccupations this summer, but I suspect as we get into the fall, I'll start getting back in here and cleaning up some of the articles and also writing new content as well too, okay? So it's available by subscription. All the articles here you can read by subscription. If you want to go ahead, there are free articles that you can read as well too. All right, so one of the things I want to show you is we have a chapter on energy and fatigue. Okay, and so these are the articles on that energy. And one thing you ought to look at before you start fixing your mitochondria is look at this article about fix fatigue, boost your energy, the basic steps, okay? There are things you should do before you actually try to fix your mitochondria. And take a look here. You're going to see what those basic steps are, okay? And then here on this page, we should have the link to the, there's an article we have about NT factor. You're seeing me circle it there. You can take a look there. It talks more about how this works, okay? And then let me just show you, there's another article that you might want to look at on the glutathione. You can find it in our detox chapter. And there's a whole article we have on glutathione. Where is it? Here it is. It's called Glutathione, the Great Fixer. Okay, so if you want to take a look at that as well too. And then finally, because I did talk about nerve repair, there is an article we have, or a chapter we have called Brain and Nerves. And if you want to look at how to repair nerves using some of the ideas I just talked about, you click on this article here, Neuropathy Repair, Heal That Tingling, Numbness, and Pain. There's more ideas I have besides just the NT factor and the glutathione that I just talked about. All right? All right, so let me go back here again. All right, Deborah, I hope that gives you some answers to your questions then too. All right, and thank you for posting that. Let me go ahead and move on here. All right, so let me see here. Hello, Susan. Let's see. Hi, Marty and Tara. Could you speak to the computerized electrodermal stress analysis machines, if you're familiar? So, Susan, I'm not familiar with them. I know there are some machines out there. I'm familiar with this specific one. There are ways that you can check how the activity at acupuncture points, which are also electromagnetic fields of an acupuncture points using machines. I'm not clear how useful they really are, and I am not. I have no information about how accurate this machine is. Okay, so I'm sorry I can't answer your question there. Thank you for asking it, though. All right. All right. Next question is from Eric. Let's see here. I don't know why, Eric, but sometimes when you write questions in, I can't get them to post. Let me see. There's a way. I'm going to have to rewrite this and make it look like something from me, and that way I can get it posted. So just a second here. right, so here we go. Okay, so this is actually from Eric, everyone. Even though you're going to see my name at the top of it, I had to post it into one that I wrote, okay? Hi, Eric. Welcome back here again. Let's see. My wife is being treated for Lyme and Bartonella. Her Lyme-literate medical doctor had me do an IGeneX test that she said showed some exposure but no active infection. I'm not sick and have no symptoms. Is there any antimicrobial or something else to minimize transmission of Lyme? Thanks so much. Okay, so I think what you're saying is that your Lyme-literate medical doctor for your wife had you tested to see if you actually have evidence of Lyme. So let's talk about that. So we do think that Lyme can be sexually transmitted, although we really don't know what the actual rate is. We don't have good science about it, okay? What we do know, and I have articles written about that as well too, what we do know is that there are some studies that show it is found in the male ejaculate. It is also found in vaginal fluid. One of the studies showed that it's found 100% of the time in female vaginal fluid. That same study showed it was found up 50% of the time in the male ejaculate. Another study was done and showed reverse results, being that it was 100% of the male ejaculate and 50% of the time found in female vaginal fluid of people that had Lyme, okay? What we do know, I see a slightly higher percentage than I might think of couples having it. I don't know the actual percent that is transmitted. I think maybe around 10, 15%, but that really is just off the top of my head. There is another research article that many of you may find, and I do reference in our article about whether this can be sexually transmitted. It's a research project done by Stricker out of California. I don't think it was a good study, and Stricker was actually quoted as saying he thinks we should be more worried about what's going on in the bedroom than out in our backyards, and I just think I think it's garbage. I think he's overinflated the results of his study. What his study showed, they looked at 13 people only. Okay, so we should never make any conclusions in medicine when there's only 13 people studied on anything. There's just not enough volume of people that have been studied, okay? But what his study showed is of 13 people, male and female, everyone had some evidence of Lyme in their fluids, okay, in their vaginal fluid or their male ejaculate. And in that study, there were 6 people that were in partnerships, okay? So there were 3 couples, basically. And those couples each had identical strains of Lyme. Now, Stricker took that to mean that there it is, our evidence that it is sexually transmitted. The problem is they didn't do any controls, and they didn't write about information about when was the last time that the male ejaculated into the female. All right, so we have no way of knowing whether the Lyme that was found in the vaginal fluid was actually from the male, and that was being measured. So we don't know. I don't know if his study means anything, actually. So if you run across that study, I pretty much would ignore it. I just don't think it was a useful study, and I think he way overstated the findings that he has as well, too. All right, but I do think it can be sexually transmitted, okay? Now, what do you do to prevent transmission? Well, when your wife is being treated, she is on antimicrobials that should be keeping it from being transmitted, number one. Number two, if a person gets, I believe that the majority of people that actually get Lyme infection do not get Lyme disease, all right? Disease is the mess that occurs whenever the infection is not kept under control by the immune system. And I suspect there's a lot of people walking around out there that would test positive for Lyme but have no symptoms, okay? All right, so that's one concept. The other thing that happens is you can get false positive tests. So even if your test came back positive and you had no symptoms of Lyme, it's possible that that test was actually a false positive test, okay? And finally, let's say that we believe that the test really is positive and you have no symptoms. This is the kind of situation where I do not recommend giving antibiotics. Now, I know some of my partners do, or some of my colleagues do, but here's what I get concerned about. When we treat Lyme and somebody has had it for a year or more, the best that we're probably doing is knocking the germ level down. And people that have had Lyme for a year or more, we probably never get rid of every germ, okay? So what we're trying to do is restore health. So if you already start healthy and you've got the Lyme germ in you, why would we treat? We have no way of knowing if we ever get rid of the germ. There's not a test to show that. We can't follow your symptoms to see if you get better, okay? So we have no way of knowing if we're done treating. And then here's the problem I get concerned about. When we use antibiotics, there is always the risk that we can create a germ that gets stronger. It learns resistance. It finds ways to beat the antibiotics, okay? And if that's so, maybe we trigger germs that get stronger and then you develop Lyme disease because we caused you to by using the antibiotics, all right? Now, having said that, there is a time and a place to use antibiotics. And we should use antibiotics when you have a lot of symptoms to help get your germs under control, okay? But I don't think we should be doing that in healthy people. All right, so what about your wife when she gets well? Well, when she gets well, in case you might give something back to her if you happen to have it, she should be doing things to boost her immune system, basically, okay? And there's a whole article I have about that. But I don't think necessarily we need to treat you even if you had it, even if you had positive Lyme testing, okay? So that's a lot of stuff I just said. I'm gonna just give you a quick reference that you can look at this with more detail here. I'm gonna do screen share. All right, so we're back in the Treat Lyme book here again. I'm going to go to the table of contents. There is a chapter we have about transmission, okay? And here's the article we have about can Lyme be sexually transmitted? Yes. And in here, I'll just show you quickly. It talks about the various studies that have been done. I just kind of outlined those up there. There's a whole video that we have here. But then I pose some questions and I give you answers. Should I have my healthy sexual partner tested for Lyme disease? I basically say no, but I give you a rationale for it, okay? But shouldn't I have my partner tested to prevent him or her transmitting the germ back to me? Now, I just kind of answered that, okay? But take a look there. All right, and then should I tell my sexual partner that I have Lyme? Should we use condoms? And boy, that's a hard one. Take a look at my rationale on that question there, okay? All right, and then let me look at one other thing here. Let's see. Well, I think that's enough. I think I covered that topic. All right, let me go ahead and go back here again. All right, thanks for that question, Eric. All right, let me see here. Next question is, all right, let me get into that one. Okay, Susan, you're writing a number of questions. I'm going to have to hold off on some of those until I get through some of the other questions here, okay? So I'll hold those aside, but I may come back to those later. All right. So again, we had a question from one of the participants about Dr. Brooks sharing her story. She's not going to be participating on these webinars anymore. She might choose to do something on her own, and we'll have to see if she does and if she gets that information out to everyone, okay? But she won't be participating in this webinar anymore, all right? All right, so let me see here. This is a question from Debbie. Hi, Debbie. Can you Herx from IV glutathione from fractionated citrus pectin? My daughter seems to be getting worse after these treatments. Thank you. Okay, so let's look at that. So glutathione, everyone, is the master antioxidant. It's made in every one of our cells. It helps repair cell damage, okay? It also is used, by the liver to detox chemicals out of us, all right? And so in Lyme, we use it IV for a couple reasons. One is it can help improve liver detox. The other reason we use it is as a very powerful antioxidant that can knock cytokines down. So many of you who have listened to my webinars know that when people feel bad in Lyme, it's actually they feel bad because the immune cells, white blood cells, are making too many cytokines. In fact, Lyme disease symptoms are actually too many cytokine symptoms, okay? And glutathione can help lower those as well, too. All right, now, whenever we detox with glutathione, the act of moving toxins out of the body, believe it or not, can trigger more cytokines, even though glutathione is helping to lower those. So it's not uncommon to have people flare a bit after their glutathione. But usually by around 3 to 4 treatments of doing that, that should have stopped, okay? At least that's been what my experience is, all right? Now, Fractionated pectin powder binds toxins up in the intestines and helps pull them out. And so the act of moving toxins out of the intestines also can trigger cytokines. One of the things that you may want to do, have your daughter do as she's doing this, is in addition to trying these detox methods, would be to help lower cytokines by using anti-cytokine agents, okay? And these would be things that limit cytokine production. And my favorite thing to use for that is curcumin. Excuse me, everyone. Curcumin is a component of the Ayurvedic the Indian seasoning called turmeric. And it's useful because it gets inside white blood cells and blocks their production of cytokines. And as I just explained, the reason she's probably feeling worse is she's having a cytokine flare from detoxing, all right? Which I know may sound strange, but it can happen as you detox. So the way to use the curcumin is to take 500 milligrams 3 times a day. You want to do it as a liposomal variety. So liposomal means it's microscopically wrapped in fat, okay? And so that helps increase the absorption, because otherwise curcumin and even turmeric are actually not that well absorbed inside of from the intestines and into the bloodstream, all right? So I would do it as a 500 milligram pill. I like using a product made by Thorne actually for this. It's called Mariva 500, but you'd want to do 1 pill at least 3 times a day. And she probably just ought to be on it because it lowers cytokines. Lowering cytokines helps you feel better in Lyme. Lowering cytokines also can help decrease immune suppression created by those cytokines as well too. All right, so I want to show you all something here. Hold on just a minute, let me look at something. All right, so I'm going to do a quick screen share. We're going to look at one thing. All right, so I've mentioned tonight supplements, and sometimes I'm telling you the actual product or not. But if you're looking at the products we recommend to our patients here at the Healing Arts Partnership, you can find them here on our website, the Marty Ross MD Terrabrook ND supplements. That's the name of the store. You can find it at www.treatlyme.com, okay? Our book is found at www.treatlyme.net. The supplements are found at www.treatlyme.com. So for instance, if you want to see the product we recommend for curcumin, in the search box up here, you just type in curcumin, and you'll see products come up that have it. And the one that has only curcumin in it is this Mariva 500. This is the product we like to work with, okay? When you're thinking about supplements, you need to make sure that you're getting something that is made by companies that are known to find the most active ingredients. They source for the most active, the most effective ingredients, okay? And it's hard to figure out what they are. Now, we've done the guesswork for you. We've spent a lot of time looking out there at what the best supplements would be, all right, based on the manufacturers and their record of sourcing for good quality. The other thing we've tried to do with our supplements is, or not tried to do, but the other thing we've done is we found products or companies that make their products that do not add harmful artificial fillers, because you also have to worry about that, okay? So if you're going to use supplements, and we recommend use supplements for many reasons, make sure they're good quality products, and you can find the kind of products we recommend here at Marty Ross MD Terrabrook ND supplements, all right? All right, so let's go ahead and go back here. All right, thank you for that question, Debbie. All right, hello, Brenda. Let's see. Hi, Doctors Ross and Brooke. Last week I asked how often I should have phospholipid IV exchange. Guess what? I didn't get the answer for you. I'm sorry about that. Let's see. And Bartonella told me to ask again. Also, what do you think of colonic hydrotherapy for Lyme? Thanks. Okay, so I can try to answer that last part of the question, Brenda. Can you actually do me a favor? Can you write an email to me? Because that way it'll be in my email box, and I can just write you the response on the phospholipid exchange IV. My email is docmarty, that's DOCMARTY, And then this is really long, but it's my practice name, which is The Healing Arts with an S partnership.net. So it's Doc Marty at thehealingartspartnership.net. Okay, now everyone, that's for Brenda. Please don't everyone start sending me their questions. I won't answer them, okay? This is just a one-time offer for Brenda to do that so I can get that information for her. All right, so let's look at hydrotherapy. So, or they're called colonics, okay? It's basically having an irrigation with water of your intestines. Now, what's the benefit of that? Well, what that does is it creates bowel movement. You're basically evacuating the intestines. And what that can help do is to pull toxins out of the intestines. You have to be careful not to overdo it, because you can actually, at least in my experience, what can happen is you can irrigate so often that you actually get rid of the good bacteria up there. In addition, I think there's better ways to detox than doing the colon hydrotherapy. If you are a person that has regular bowel movements, I don't think you need to do it. If you happen to be a person that doesn't have regular bowel movements, you might think about doing it occasionally, maybe once a week, maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks. We have no science that actually shows benefit, though I do want to let you know that. In terms of why you might want to do it, why are bowel movements important? Well, when the way that detox works in the body is that toxins that are fat-based go to the liver, and in the liver, they're turned from a fat-based form into a water-based form, okay? And in a water-based form then, so that basically the fat-based have a chemical added to them by the liver that transforms them into a water-based form. They are then moved out into the intestines, and in the intestines, that water group can be broken off by bacteria in the intestines unless there is adequate movement, rapid enough movement of those toxins through the intestines. So usually 1 bowel movement every day, 2 bowel movements a day is going to be adequate to have that happen, all right? So if you have too slow of movement, though, the bacteria that line there do break off the water group. That causes those toxins to become fat-based again, and then what happens is they get reabsorbed back into the body again, and basically you're not able to detox, okay? So having about 1 bowel movement a day is a good way. One way to do that is to make sure you're having plenty of fiber in your diet with beans and legumes, okay? And the other thing, and that can be 2 to 3 servings a day of beans or legumes. Whole grains would be a way of doing that as well too. White rice is not a whole grain. Brown rice is a whole grain, okay? And you want to make sure that you're having enough water to be able to help lead to having enough bowel movements too. You need to have water in your intestines, basically to make things loose enough so they'll come out. And an adequate amount of water for helping with detox, a great amount of water, would be to take your weight in pounds, divide that in 2, and that's the number of ounces of water you want to have a day, okay? So if you're 150 pounds, you want to divide that by 2, that's 75, and then you would have 75 ounces of water a day. Now, I know that's a lot, okay, but that's ideal. So if you have enough fiber and you have enough water intake, you're going to have frequent enough bowel movements to help detox, okay? So you may not need to do that colon hydrotherapy, all right? So thanks for that question, Brenda, and I hope that gives you some ideas there. Good luck to you. All right, so let's go here. This is from Jane. Hello, Jane. Let's see, don't carbohydrates produce excess yeast like sugar does, or is there a difference? Can excess yeast cause increase in nerve, calves, and feet? All right, let me see if I can kind of tease out what I think you mean here. All right, so basically, Jane, yeast don't produce sugar, all right, nor do they produce carbohydrates, but yeast are fed by sugar. So our intestines have both bacteria and yeast that live there. Yeast requires sugar to grow. And so simple sugar like cookie, candy, cake, ice cream, that's going to feed them. Carbohydrates can, but they have less of a chance of doing it if they have fiber attached. Okay, so fiber attached carbohydrates would be your beans and legumes. They have a lot of fiber. Whole grains like brown rice or quinoa. Those are types of grains that will have fiber attached, and they're not going to tend to feed the yeast as well too, okay? People that tend to have too many yeast in their intestines may start craving more sugar. And the reason they crave sugar is that the yeast want to be fed, and they release chemicals that tell the brain, feed us, all right? So then we start having sugar cravings, and that can lead people to want to have more sugar, all right? Now, what happens when you have too many yeast in your body is that it can make symptoms related to Lyme disease worse. Let me try to explain what the relationship is in that. So, and to do that, let me talk about cytokines. I mentioned cytokines earlier tonight, but I'm going to come back and explain them again. Let me have a sip of water here first, though. Okay, so whenever we get germs in us, the immune system, white blood cells, will see that germ, whether it's a yeast germ, whether it's Borrelia, which is the Lyme germ. And what it will do is it will make cytokines to help get rid of it, okay? And so cytokines are chemicals that are good and bad. On the good side, they cause more white blood cells to be made. They draw those white blood cells to where the infection is, and they help those white blood cells work better, all right? So that's all good. But in Lyme, the immune system does not do a good job of getting rid of the germ. And it keeps trying harder and harder, and eventually it makes too many cytokines. So you get a syndrome of excess cytokines, okay? So excess cytokines do a lot of problems, or cause a lot of problems. Number one, they can disturb your sleep centers, so it makes it so you can't sleep, makes it so you can't think, can give you body pain, can give you fatigue. I can go down the list of what we call Lyme disease symptoms, and the majority of those symptoms are actually excess cytokine symptoms, all right? All right, so yeast also trigger more cytokines because yeast are not dealt with well by the immune system either. So if you have too many yeast living in your intestines, they trigger cytokines, which can give you problems of Lyme, which may be what you're talking about, your calves and your feet here, okay? So if you have too many yeast, what I suggest people do is get rid of them, all right? So how do you know if you have too many yeast? Well, let me show you some resources that you can look at later, and I also will show you a resource that you can look at to figure out what to do about those yeast too. So let me do a quick screen share here again. All right, so you want to take a look at our, so in the Treat Lyme book again, here's our table of contents, which is where I am. You want to look at the chapter on yeast, okay? So I'm just going to click there. All right, and when you get into the chapter on yeast, you're going to see an article about how do you diagnose it. It's called A Silent Problem, Do You Have Yeast, okay? And then there's the other article we have here about how do you kill them? What do you do to get rid of them, okay? So take a look at both of these articles. That'll give you enough information. I'm not going to go over here right now. I want to make sure that I have time to get to the rest of the questions, all right? So thank you for that question, though. All right, let's see, let's go back here again. All right, Jane, good luck to you. I hope I answered. It was hard for me to tell exactly what you meant with your question, but I hope I got the answer for you there. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move on. All right, so this next question is from Linda. Hi, Linda. Let's see, 1 week ago, a tooth was extracted that has bothered me off and on after a root canal 9 years ago. Dentist found an infection that caused a hole into my sinuses. My doctor has been treating me for the 3 Bs, and I think what you mean is Bartonella, Borrelia, which is Lyme, and Babesia. So Bartonella and Babesia would be co-infections, other germs you could have gotten when that tick gave you the Lyme germ. My doctor has been treating me for the 3 Bs, but with this new infection, he wants to add cipro. I'm concerned about the recent, let's see. I'm going to post the second part of this question. I'm concerned about the recent discoveries of how this med damages the mitochondria. Any good alternatives to cipro? And can you please comment on how tick infections interplay with dental issues? That's interesting. So, okay, so cipro is an antibiotic that we can use to treat Bartonella. It can be helpful for that. We can use it to treat sinus infections, okay? But there are other alternatives you can use to treat sinus infections. So for instance, Biaxin can treat sinus infections. Amoxicillin and augmentin can treat sinus infections. Zithromax, well, I don't like Zithromax for sinus infections, but you have other alternatives. So I'm not sure why your doctor would necessarily be looking at cipro. In terms of mitochondria damages, I'm not familiar exactly with the mitochondria damage, but what I get more concerned about with cipro and members of that family, the other member being levaquin, also known as levofloxacin. They're part of a group called the fluoroquinolones, and you may even see websites or people writing about being quote unquote floxed, which means they have a hard time with side effects from being on these medications. The biggest problem with both of these medications is that people can get tendon pain or tendon inflammation. And rarely, if that does develop, you can't get rid of that tendon pain. And occasionally you can actually get breakage or rupture of your tendons, okay? So I will use cipro, I will use levaquin periodically, but I tend to shy away from them these days because of some of those problems. If you happen to have to be on it, the way that you can limit those problems from happening is to make sure that you take magnesium. If you can take around, say, about 200 milligrams of magnesium in the morning, maybe around 400, 450 milligrams of magnesium a night. If you get more magnesium in, it seems to help those problems or help prevent those problems from happening, okay? Now, in terms of Lyme and dental infections, well, one of the things that can happen is you can get little pockets underneath your roots, and those pockets can get infected with Lyme, actually. And it can be a source that's hard to get to. And so sometimes there's dentists that actually can evaluate to see if you have little pockets of infection. If you do, they can be treated. There are some dentists that will actually inject ozone, for instance, into those pockets. They can sometimes be difficult to get into with IV or oral antibiotics. So sometimes the dentist can either inject antibiotics into those areas. Occasionally, the tooth just has to be removed to get at those as well, too. All right. So, Linda, I hope that answers your questions, and good luck with things. Just cleaning things up here. All right. Get rid of one more here. All right, so this is a question from Natalie. Let's see. What do you think about ozone sauna therapy and ozone insulfations? Do they work for Lyme? Okay. So ozone in sauna, basically it's steamed ozone and you're going to breathe it in. There's many different ways of getting ozone in, okay? So you can breathe it in. You can get IV ozone. You can get rectal ozone as well, too. Those are the main ways of getting it. Ozone is a type of treatment known as an oxidizing medicine. So oxidizing agents would be things like oxygen is an oxidizing agent, hydrogen peroxide, either IV, or you can take baths in it, or you can do it rectally. That is also an oxygen or oxidizing agent. And then there is ozone, okay? Now, what oxidizing agents do is they damage membranes. So you're probably very familiar, everyone's probably familiar with anti-aging medicine. There's a lot of discussion about having people on antioxidants, for instance, okay? And that is because oxidizing agents damage membranes, and that causes early aging. Now, when we look at oxidizing agents, they can kill germs. And I think they may be okay to do on a limited basis. However, I don't find that they work that well. I think they work maybe about 50, 60% of the time. But I wouldn't probably do more than a few or 4 of them, because I think one of the problems I get worried about is, in addition to killing germs, which I think they help maybe 60% of the time, the other added problem is they damage our membranes. And I haven't seen studies about repeated use of oxidizing agents, but I would get concerned that down the road, people are going to be having damage to their cell membranes, which may manifest as other problems, okay? Maybe even cancer, for instance. We just don't know. So I don't think there's enough usefulness in terms of getting benefit to warrant doing them, number one, okay? And so I don't really like to recommend that people use these forms of treatment, because I think there's also a great potential of harm that can develop from them as well too. All right, so I hope that gives you information. And thank you for that question. Oh, one other form of oxidizing agents that you can use is very high dose vitamin C, IV vitamin C, up around 30 to 50 grams would give you, can give you a good oxidizing agent treatment as well too. Okay, so that's an additional way to go ahead and do that. Bear with me here, everyone. I'm just taking a quick look here at the other. Okay, all right, so let me go back here again. Thank you for that question here. All right, let's see what's next here. All right, hello, Jenny. Let's see, tried ashwagandha again and get ice cold as before. So did astragalus, and that gives me energy. Is that okay? Interesting. So astragalus, I mean, I'm okay with that. I'm not quite sure why it's giving you energy though. Astragalus, well, let me talk about both of these. I gotta reposition myself here. I'm gonna move that back again. All right, so astragalus, everyone, is an herb that can help boost the immune system. Okay, that's its main function. Ashwagandha, on the other hand, helps support the adrenal glands, which can give energy by causing the adrenals to make more cortisol, all right? And also by supporting the adrenals, then you also get better immune system function too. So there's a relationship between the two, and that ashwagandha indirectly, by helping the adrenals work better, supports the immune system, and that astragalus also supports the immune system. All right. Now, I haven't seen astragalus actually give more energy before, but one of my statements in medicine is that anything can happen to anyone with anything. So obviously, it's given you some support there. The other ways you could support the adrenals would be to use something called rhodiola. You could also use some Siberian ginseng. You can use something called cordyceps. Or erythrococcus. Those are other ways to do it. Those other ways, though, can result often in they're too energetically hot of herbs. They can actually be too stimulating and lead to problems with causing anxiety, actually, or causing jitteriness. So I don't prefer those other ways. The ashwagandha, I do. If you're having low energy, you still may want to. That's right. You wouldn't want to do it because it gives you the ice symptoms, okay? And I haven't seen that happen with ashwagandha before either, all right? So Jenny, I hope that answers your questions for you. Thank you for that. All right. Hello, Derek. Let's see. Hi, Doc. Referred by Katra. Been ill 6 months. Started antibiotics 9 weeks ago. 1 month of amoxicillin, 500 milligrams 3 times daily, no help. Azithromycin, 500 milligrams daily for 6 weeks, Herx. Cemento, 18 drops a day, and Banderol plus vitamins. My PCP had Lyme, but is tight-lipped about protocol. Hygienics results in 6 days. Let's see, thanks. All right, so quite sure what your question is here. Let me see if there was a second part here, just a minute. Well, let me just make a comment here. So regarding hygienics results, regarding any test results, so testing can help be a useful component in deciding if you might have Lyme, but you can have negative testing and still have it. And in fact, 20% of the time that somebody has Lyme, the testing will be negative, all right? So when we consider if somebody has Lyme disease, there's 4 things we look at. One is, what do the symptoms tell us? Number 2 is there a risk of getting it? The biggest risk would be a known tick bite in New Jersey, where about 95% or 100% of ticks carry Lyme, but 50% of the time people that have Lyme, they don't remember a tick bite. So sometimes you can have Lyme and not remember it too, but we should look and see if there's ways that you might have come into contact with ticks, okay? The other thing we consider is, do you have enough symptom, or do you have any physical exam findings that look like Lyme? And frankly, many people don't have physical exam findings. And then the last thing that should be considered is, do you have supportive testing? But again, 20% of the time you don't have it, okay? So Derek, just realize you may not get testing that really shows it, okay? All right, now, in terms of your treatment, when you treat Lyme, you've got to make sure you're treating for 3 forms of the germ at the same time. So there's a form of the germ that's a spirochete, looks like a little corkscrew, okay? There's another form of Lyme that lives inside of your cells. We call that intracellular Lyme. And finally, there is a microscopic cyst form of the germ as well, too. So when you treat, you got to go after all 3 forms. The amoxicillin that you are on only treats spirochete Lyme. And normally, even if I were to use amoxicillin, I would use it more at least 2 or 3 pills 3 times a day. So I think you are underdosed. The azithromycin can treat intracellular Lyme and spirochete Lyme, so that would be helpful. Now I can't not tell from what you've written here whether you're using the Zithromax and amoxicillin at the same time. Cemento and Banderol will treat all 3 forms of the Lyme germ. It can pick up cyst and also can pick up biofilm communities too. If you've been mixing all 3 of these together at the same time, you're covering completely the germs. Although if you're on Banderol Cemento, you don't necessarily need to be on Zithromax, which is azithromycin, and the amoxicillin, because you've already covered all 3 forms of the germ with the Banderol Cemento, okay? But usually Banderol Cemento, I'm gonna get people up to 30 drops twice a day, 18 drops twice a day. I don't think is enough, okay? So I'm gonna show you an article here in a minute, Derek, about where you can read more about antibiotic approaches, antimicrobial approaches to Lyme. Keep in mind what I just said about testing. Even if it's negative, you may still find out that you have Lyme for the other reasons I just talked about here. And then I see you posted another question here, which you said, nice haircut, thank you. I did have a few of them cut a couple of weeks ago. It's starting to grow back. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it short again or not, but we'll see in time. And then you asked a question about Rife machines, all right? So let me talk about Rife machines quickly. So first of all, as a physician, the Food and Drug Administration has been known to raid offices of doctors that recommend Rife machines. So I cannot make a formal recommendation. But what I can talk about is the experience that my patients describe to me, and then I'll just relay that, okay? That's the best I can do. So I can't fully recommend them, but I can tell you about the experience that my patients who are already doing Rife without my recommendation talk about, okay? So what my patients tell me is when they're on Rifing, that about 60% of the time they get benefit. Now, what I will tell you about the theory about Rife and how it works, the way that in theory it works is that it creates electromagnetic frequencies that resonate with the covering of a germ, all right? So the only, of the 3 forms of Lyme, the only one that has a true covering is the spirochete. So, and the way it works, it'd be like if you put a singer in front of a glass of water. They could sing at a frequency that bursts that glass of water. It's the same idea with using a Rife. The theory is that it creates electromagnetic frequencies that resonate with the covering of the germ that burst it, okay? So in theory, it could get at the spirochete. The problem is it doesn't probably do anything about intracellular Lyme, and it probably doesn't do anything about the cyst form of the germ too. So if you are gonna Rife, you're probably gonna wanna do something still about intracellular Lyme, spirochete Lyme. You could do that using the Banderol Cemento. Sometimes you could do it using prescription medicines too, okay? Now, I'm just talking about theory. I can't recommend it because the Food and Drug Administration won't let me do it. Main reason is they don't have safety studies. But I can tell you, people report some improvements about 60% of the time. That's just based on my experience and when they use it on their own. Okay? All right. So I've said a lot of things. I'm going to just show you some articles that you can look at later, Derek, to get some more information here. So let me do a screen share. All right, so we're back in the Treat Lyme book. I'm gonna go back to the table of contents here. All right, and the first thing I'm gonna have you look at later is the article on how to or the chapter on how to diagnose. In here, there is a video that I created a number of years ago in a webinar which is still current. Nothing has really changed about how we diagnose it. It's called How to Diagnose Chronic Lyme Disease More Than a Test, okay? This talks about the various things you need to consider and how you can make a diagnosis of Lyme even when testing is negative. Just click on the video here. You're going to be able to see the whole thing. It's about 15 minutes, okay? So it's not a simple topic, and I go through 15 minutes about how you wind up diagnosing Lyme, all right? All right, the other thing that you should take a look at is our article about how do you treat Lyme. So you can find that in our chapter called Infection Treatment Plans. All right, and in this Infection Treatment Plans chapter, you can find many different articles about how to treat all the different infections that can be part of Lyme, all right? And the one that you ought to take a look at is this article called Kills Lyme Germs, A Brief Antibiotic Guide. I wrote this back in around a couple of years ago. I updated it in 2014, okay? But in here, it talks about how do you treat it. It talks about how you should combine antibiotics to treat all three forms. Gives you some things to consider, okay? And then I give down here what the various antibiotics are and how they might work, okay? So for instance, I talk about tetracyclines, and they're known to treat spirochete and L-form, which is the intracellular Lyme, all right? I talk in here about Otoba bark extract and cat's claw. Otoba is your banderol. Cat's claw is the cemento, okay? In fact, I've got a whole article I've written about that as well too, all right? So take a look here at these pieces of information, all right? So hold on here just a minute, everyone. I'm gonna bring us back here. All right, so let me go back here. And Derek, thank you for those questions, and I hope that gives you some ideas too. Let me clean out your questions here. All right, everyone, excuse me, just I have to respond to a quick text that just came through. All right, sorry about that. I had to take care of that. All right, let's go ahead here and see what's next. All right, let's see here. A question from Linda. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. I have been treating Lyme for about a year now. My inflammation is still high. What can I do more to decrease it? Started at 6.4, now 5.8, still very high. So Linda, I'm not clear what you mean by 6.4, 5.8, what that actual test was, okay? Because there's various ways of measuring inflammation. But the ways to do so in Lyme, inflammation is created by these inflammatory cytokines that I was talking about earlier tonight, okay? And those cytokines are made by white blood cells. They're good and bad. They help turn white blood cells on to fight infection, but in Lyme, the immune system doesn't do a good job and eventually makes too many cytokines. So what you want to do is things to lower cytokines, all right? And I've talked about those actually in an article we have about how to deal with Herxheimer reactions, because Herxheimer reactions, which are when you kill Lyme germs, the immune system sees them and makes more cytokines, so people often get worse when we treat Lyme. I describe in the article on how to deal with Herxheimer reactions, really how to deal with excess cytokines. I'm going to do a quick screen share and show that to you here, okay? All right, so we have a whole chapter on Herxheimer reaction, and cytokines. Okay, you see me circling it right there. All right. So take a look at this article called Herxheimer die-off reaction, inflammation run amok. All right. And in here, you're going to see where I talk about cytokines and what I wrote here, okay, the good and the bad. I describe how they're made, and then I talk about what the problem is, okay? And then we talk about what to do about them, all right? So I have a number of recommendations here about them, but the first thing you want to do is at the beginning of treatment, I like people to be on that curcumin. I mentioned it earlier tonight. It's 500 milligram pill, 1 pill 3 times a day, and be on a good multivitamin. Okay. Second step, if that's not enough, you can add either glutathione, 500 milligrams 1 or 2 times a day, or either quercetin or Colonia cava. These are other herbal medicines that you can use, okay? All right, so take a look here. This gives you some ideas on the steps that you can take to lower those cytokines, all right? Okay, let me go back here again. Okay, Linda, the other thing ultimately to get your inflammation down is to be sure that you are actually treating all of the problems that you're having, your infections, okay? So make sure you're treating your Lyme and your Bartonella and your Babesia if those are there, all right? Okay, thank you for that question, Linda. Good luck to you. All right, let's see where we are here. You guys are asking some great questions. I'm appreciating it. Looks like we've had quite a good turnout here again tonight, too. I'm kind of surprised given that it's later in August and we're getting ready for the holidays coming up here, but I'm glad to see so many people here tonight, too. All right, let's see here. All right. Hello, Nirlana. Good to see you here again, or at least to see your name here again. Hi, Dr. Ross. How does natural herbs and naturopathy work during pregnancy to prevent Lyme disease and Bartonella? All right, so as many of you may know, Lyme can be transmitted during pregnancy, and we think Bartonella can too. Although I think it's a low chance of Bartonella, but I have no science. We don't have adequate science that talks about the transmission rates of Bartonella, okay? What we do know, though, is about Lyme. There's been some pregnancy registries kept out of the East Coast in the United States in the late 80s and early 90s. And what those studies showed is that for Lyme, there's a transmission rate of about 50% to the developing baby if antibiotics are not used during the pregnancy. If, however, antibiotics are used during pregnancy, that transmission goes down to 0%, okay? Now, that is if you use the prescription antibiotics. And the prescription antibiotics that I like to use is either Zithromax, amoxicillin, something called cefuroxime or Ceftonir. Zithromax may have the ability to treat for Bartonella too, although I wouldn't use it as a agent for people that have active Bartonella to get it under control. But it may have the ability to limit transmission during pregnancy. We just don't know. We don't have the science on it, okay? Now, what about the herbs? Well, for the herbs that we use to treat Lyme and that we treat Bartonella, that we use to treat Bartonella, do not have adequate safety studies to know if they're safe to take during pregnancy. Nor do I have any useful information based on my experience or upon any research that they make a difference either, okay? So, Lorlana, I'd probably shy away from them. I'd probably look at, if you're having problems with the Bartonella and Lyme, if you want to be or to take something to prevent at least the Lyme transmission and possibly the Bartonella transmission, I would use Zithromax. And I would do it as a 500 milligram pill, 1 pill a day during the pregnancy. All right? All right. Sorry I don't have good information about the herbs. We just don't know. Okay. Thank you for that question. Good luck to you. All right. Let's see here. Next question here is from Karen. Hi, Karen. Hold on just a minute. I got to take a sip of water again, everyone. All right, let's see. Can you describe the range of symptoms caused by a seizure and which of the tick-borne agents can cause them as new events after 3 years of antibiotic treatments for Lyme and Babesia? How do you know when autoimmunity becomes the driver for neurologic symptoms? Thanks for your help. Those are great questions, Karen. Thank you for that. So seizure symptoms, so there are true seizures, okay? And then there are seizure activity that we sometimes see in Lyme that actually, when you do studies, when you do electromagnetic studies of the brain, something called EEGs, where they hook wires up to your head and they measure electrical activity, the type of seizure sometimes that people with Lyme have will not register with an EEG. The ones that truly are seizures are the kind that do register with EEGs, but the type of Lyme tremor or seizures that people get often will not register, and therefore the neurologists try to say you don't have seizures when in fact you do. Okay, so symptoms that that look like seizures can be shaking of the arms and the legs can be seizures. Sometimes, and the other thing that'll happen if you have true seizures, the kind that might show up in the EEG, is after you have them, you're going to be more fatigued. Often you can have problems with urinating on yourself or having bowel movements on yourself too, okay? Those would be true seizures. Now in Lyme, people can get just shakes of one arm. They might get bodies that kind of shake all over too that may not necessarily show up on EEGs. And sometimes with the Lyme type seizures that don't show up on the EEG, sometimes we'll see that people don't get a loss of bowel or bladder function by stooling or peeing on themselves, okay? Now, if somebody has seizures or seizure-like activity, I always want to make sure that I am treating for Bartonella, all right? So when I look at what you've been treated here for, yep, Lyme can give you seizures. Babesia, I usually don't think of as something that's going to trigger seizures, but Bartonella can. So if you're still having seizures, one thing you might want to look at is review the symptoms that people have that can suggest Bartonella. I'll show you an article on that in a minute. And you might want to talk with your Lyme literate medical doctor, or hopefully you have one, and ask them if they would consider treating you for Bartonella as well too, okay? So it's possible you got Bartonella triggering that, okay? All right, now the question about autoimmunity. So in Lyme, there is a theory that the reason some people don't get better from Lyme is that the immune system being stimulated by Lyme turns on the body, okay? It attacks the body. We call that autoimmunity. So Lyme can trigger autoimmune illnesses. Now, we don't have a good study, a test that shows that. So if I am considering that somebody has an illness that might be triggered by Lyme, usually I'm going to start thinking about looking for autoimmunity if we're like maybe a year, maybe 2 years into treatment, a person's not getting much better. Then I might try a treatment for autoimmune illness that can help in Lyme, and that's something called low-dose naltrexone. All right, so let's look at what naltrexone is. So our body has its own pain control system, and these same chemicals also modulate or regulate the immune system. And those pain chemicals are called endorphins, okay? So endorphins are made by the body to help regulate pain, and they also regulate the immune system as well too, all right? So what we can do, there is a theory that when endorphins get dysregulated, that the immune system can attack the body basically. So what we can do, we can re-regulate it. And what we use is a medicine called naltrexone. Naltrexone is an endorphin or a narcotic blocker. In fact, it's made for people that have narcotic overdose to reverse it, okay? It comes as a 20 milligram pill. And if you use it as a 20 milligram pill, it provides almost a continuous 24-hour blockade of the endorphin sites. But we want to do a shorter blockade. So we use something called low-dose naltrexone, which is we have a compounding pharmacy mix it up as either a 1.5 or 3 milligram or 4.5 milligram pill. When you use it at that dose, it provides a temporary blockade of the endorphin sites. And so what happens is when you blockade those block those endorphin sites, the brain doesn't like it. And it sends out a bunch of signals to the endorphin producing parts of the body to say, make more endorphins, okay? And so the body then responds by making more endorphins. And those endorphin sites get flooded. So when the naltrexone wears away, those sites get flooded with all those extra endorphins, and it re-regulates an autoimmune problem in the immune system, okay? Usually though, by using it for about 2 to 3 months, you're going to have big improvements if it is going to work. I see that it works in chronic Lyme maybe about 5–10% of the time. I do try it as one of those things when people aren't getting better. I have a whole article on it. I'll show you that in a minute if you want to go read more about it, okay? But my answer is give it a try and see if it makes a difference for you, okay? You start at 1.5 milligrams one time a day. Start in the morning. Don't take it at night to make it disturb your sleep. You do that for 2 weeks. If you're tolerating, then go up to 3 milligrams one time a day. You do that for 2 weeks. And if you tolerate that, go up to 4.5 milligrams one time a day, okay? So what science do we know about this? Well, there's 4 autoimmune illnesses for which we have science that says low-dose naltrexone makes a difference. One of those is a thyroid illness called Hashimoto's thyroiditis, okay? Another one is something called Crohn's disease, which is an illness where the immune system attacks the lining of the intestines. We also have evidence from fibromyalgia, which is a condition that's kind of like Lyme. It gives you a lot of muscle pain, seems to help with that. And also there's information that can help with multiple sclerosis as well too, okay? So there's some things to think about, all right? So let me do a screen share. I just want to show you a couple articles that you can look at later here for yourself, Karen. Let's see here. Okay, so we're back in the Treat Lyme book. Let's see. What is it I wanted to show you? Hold on here just a minute, everyone. I gotta look back here just a second. This is gonna look very strange too here in a second. Oh, okay, I know. All right, here we are again. All right, so in terms of the low-dose naltrexone article, where you can find that is in the chapter called Can't Get Better, Do, well, you can find it there. So there's a chapter I have called Can't Get Better, Do This. And this basically is the things to think about that you might want to look at if you're not getting better about 6 to 9 months into treatment, okay? And one of those is about autoimmune illness, all right? So the article that you could take a look here then is, the article is called, I think it is low-dose naltrexone, there it is. Okay, so you click on that, you can read more about the low-dose naltrexone. All right, and then the other article that I wanted to show you is about how to diagnose Bartonella. And it will be in our chapter called How to Diagnose. And let me see. So what I would do to figure out if you have Bartonella, take a look at this article called It Could Be Bartonella or Babesia, the Signs and Symptoms, okay? Basically, what I want to let you know is we do not have good testing. And so you've got to rely on what the symptoms tell you. So take a look here. You can look at this later. All right, let me go back here. All right, Karen, thank you for that question. All right, let's see. So let's go here. So I've got a question from Terry. Hi, Terry. Let's see. What is your opinion on bioresonance therapy for someone who has detected Lyme last month? Okay. So let's try to break that in a couple parts. So So when you say detected Lyme a month ago, I'm trying to understand if you mean acute Lyme or you've had it in you for a long time and it's suddenly getting active. So if you know that it's acute Lyme, meaning you had a tick bite and you got sick within the month of having it, that definitely is acute Lyme. I wouldn't trust bioresonance. I would use your antibiotics to actually get rid of the germ. If, however, what you mean is you don't know you had a tick bite, you don't know that you could have been exposed to ticks, you just started getting symptoms, I think bioresonance might be able to help you with symptoms, but I don't think it's going to get rid of your germ, okay? So what I would do, Terry, is for acute, make sure you're on antibiotics. If you're looking at what to do for chronic Lyme, that is if you've had Lyme for a year or more, I would follow all the steps that we have in our Lyme disease treatment guidelines. That's called the successful treatment recipe. Let me show that to you here. I'm just going to show you where it is. Take a look at it later, though. Okay, and it's free. This is our Lyme treatment guidelines are free. So let me do a screen share here again. Okay, so our Lyme disease treatment guidelines are right here. It's called a successful treatment recipe. Go ahead and look here, and you'll find the different things that we say are important throughout your treatment, like get sleep, decrease those cytokines that I talked about earlier. Okay, so just take a look here. You'll find all the essential steps, including treating your germs. All right. All right. Let me go back here again. Actually. All right, what have I done here? Okay, there we are, back here again. All right, thank you, Terry. All right, so a question from Anne-Marie. All right, so Anne-Marie is asking, so I talked earlier about oxidizing agents, and her question is, does the issues I raised about oxidizing agents causing damage to membranes apply for hyperbaric oxygen chambers? And the answer is no for some reason. And it's not clear why, but there's research showing that that probably does not apply to hyperbaric oxygen chambers, okay? So hyperbaric oxygen, everyone, means that you're getting oxygen under high pressure. You're going into a chamber. And the most effective way, you've got to make sure if you're going to do a chamber of it, that you're having a chamber that will take you on a dive that takes you down to 2.4 atmospheres. Anything less than that probably is not going to be effective. Hyperbaric oxygen is good to repair nerve injury. It actually repairs tissues. And it may or may not work effectively for killing Lyme germs. I have a mixed feelings about it, and I see mixed results on that as well, too. Okay? Thank you for that question, Emery. Continue to work through these. All right, so Derek just made a comment in response to his question. He tells me that he did have embedded ticks. So in that case, Derek, yes, double your tinctures, definitely. You want to make sure you're covering for all three forms of the germs. Go up on that Banderol Cemento, okay? All right, let's see here, that. Just another brief, quick follow-up question. Somebody asked, does Rife damage healthy cells and cause cancer? You know, I don't know. We have no science about the long-term safety of being on Rife machines, okay? All right, let's see here. This is from Charlene. Hi, Dr. Ross. Great new look, making... Thank you, Charlene. I appreciate it. One of my friends told me it makes me look older, so I guess it's a mixed bag right now. It's comfortable. It's comfortable for the summer, though. I got to admit that. Anyhow, thank you. Thank you for that. Just read, people with Lyme have high histamine levels. Second protocol for Lyme, a one-day full-blown cold with sneezing, running nose, and gone next day. Was this from high histamine levels? I don't know. Charlene, I'm not sure whether those symptoms were from high histamine, whether you got exposed to an allergen, like pollens in the air that triggered that. It would be hard for me to say for sure. All right. But thank you for that comment. Thank you for the hair comment as well, too. All right. All right, let's see here. Okay, let's see here. All right, so this next question is from Carolyn. Let's see, after approximate 2 weeks of taking turmeric supreme from Gaia Herbs, it seemed that I started bleeding easily and stopping slowly. What can I take for inflammation besides curcumin or fish oil? Right, let me see what else was in this. All right. So, I haven't seen, Caroline, I haven't seen curcumin to cause bleeding issues. However, as I've said earlier tonight, anything can happen to anyone with anything. Okay, so if there is a concern, to go ahead and stop that. What you can use besides that would be to use something called quercetin. Quercetin is a bioflavonoid. It comes from the skin of colorful fruits and vegetables. It helps lower histamines, okay? So if you have allergies, it can help with that. And in fact, that's probably the more common reason that integrative medicine doctors, like MDs that do this and naturopathic doctors that do this, might use quercetin for allergies, for instance. But it also is useful at lowering cytokines. Just like curcumin, it gets inside of white blood cells and limits their ability to produce cytokines, okay? So quercetin, you wanted, and that's Quercetin. It's a 250 milligram pill or 500 milligram pill, but you want to take 500 milligrams total 3 times a day, okay? The other option is to take a strong antioxidant. My favorite for that would be FibroBoost, which is that's the product name. It's a brown seaweed extract, okay? And it is a very potent antioxidant, and oxidizing agents it's a potent antioxidant, which lowers oxidizing agents that can trigger white blood cells to make cytokines, okay? So, and that is, if you do the FibroBoost, it'd be 2 pills 2 times a day, all right? And it's FibroOst. Okay, good luck. And thank you for that question too. All right, let's see here. Let's see, Susan. All right, this is a question from Susan. I think it's going to be in 2 parts. Hi, Marty and Tara. Have you used ivermectin for Lyme or Bartonella? It came from a veterinary medicine called Ivomed to kill germs for cattle in Colombia. Now used in humans for Lyme parasites, etc. What's your experience with this? Okay, there was a second part, but I'm not sure where that's coming from, Susan. Okay, so I will use ivermectin on people that I think might have intestinal parasites as part of their problem. And so I know that anti-parasite is, the idea of treating parasites is getting a lot of buzz these days because Dietrich Klinghardt out here in Seattle is an integrative medicine physician, has promoted the idea that parasites now are behind mostly what happens in people. Dietrich is a great doctor. I like him. He comes up with some really great ideas. But it is very common for Dietrich that he will come up with an idea that he thinks is the next greatest thing, and then he starts promoting it. And what happens is, yeah, for some people it might make a difference. What I find works is that I will treat for intestinal parasites, which I think can be the issue, and people that have a history of actually living on well water, for instance, or having had travel to to international areas without good water supplies. Or if I have somebody that has ongoing intestinal issues, which it could be an idea, Susan, that could suggest having intestinal parasites too. If I'm going to treat for parasites, though, my preference is not to do the ivermectin. I actually like using a medicine called Alinea, or I like using something called, I'm just blanking on the other medicine I like to use. Starts with a B, and I'm blanking. It'll come to me later probably. But those are my preferences, actually, rather than the ivermectin. I will use ivermectin if I've got somebody that as part of their Lyme actually has a skin manifestation called Morgellons. I have found ivermectin helpful in that situation. On its own, without intestinal symptoms, I do not find ivermectin helpful. And even if you have intestinal symptoms, I don't find ivermectin helpful, okay? So the other medicine actually, Susan, you can use for intestinal parasites is biltricide. If you're interested in looking more at the idea of parasites, there's an article we have in the treatment section on that. So yeah, that's the information I have for you on that. Thank you for that question, okay? All right. All right, let's see. Another question. Hi, Miguel. Let's see. I was pregnant while having Lyme disease, but didn't know it at the time. My baby is now 11 months. He had excess. I don't see a second part to your question here. If you post it real quick, I might be able to answer it here. So I'll wait here for that. Let me see. All right. Well, I'm not seeing the rest of your question there, Miguel. All right. And Susan, for some reason, I got rid of part of your question and I can't answer the rest of it, unfortunately. I apologize for that. All right, everyone, I'm going to wrap it up for tonight. So it's about 6:24 here. So tomorrow you'll get an email from me that has the link for tonight's recording. I'm going to schedule, by tomorrow I may have come up with a schedule for the webinars in September, but I don't think we'll begin the first week in September. It probably is going to be, I'm going to have to look at this. I got to decide if I'm going to do a webinar the week after Labor Day or not, okay? So if you do not see it in tomorrow's email, that means I'm still considering what I want to do in September with the webinars, but we will be back in September. And again, at this point, Dr. Brooke will not be joining me on those, okay? So it's going to stay now as Lyme Q&A with Marty Ross MD, so it's going to be me that you get, okay? All right, everyone. So it's been good visiting with you tonight. You had great questions. And then take a look for the email tomorrow. The other thing is here in a second, as we sign off, I'm going to take you over to the Treat Lyme book. And from there, if you have not subscribed, just go ahead and click on any of the articles that you can get to through the chapter navigation, and you'll see a screen that pops up that says you can subscribe. I appreciate if you subscribe. It helps support the work that we're doing here, that I'm doing here. So anyhow, there you go. Good night, everyone, and take care. Good luck with your Lyme disease. Bye-bye.